When I started filming for this review about a week ago, I had to take a step back because I had this overwhelming feeling like I had bitten off way more than I could chew. And that's primarily because with this album that I'm about to dive into, we're not just talking about the end of a trilogy and a series of albums, and we're not just talking about the last release between Dillon and Paten Locke. But we're also talking about a project that spans well over a decade and is a culmination of a story between two friends. And it brings about the ending of a relationship. And it also deals with the topics of dearth and shortage, which we're all too familiar with in today's political and socioeconomic landscape. So, needless to say, there's a lot to cover here. And I wanted to make sure that I'm presenting to you the weight that this album holds, at least in my personal opinion. Not only is it just a masterclass in how to make some of the dopest hip hop you've ever heard, I believe it is also an example of how to make an album that stands the test of time. So, before I dive into this album, let's give a little bit of background about the characters involved. Dillon and Paten Locke. Paten Locke is one of the unsung heroes of the underground hip hop scene. He's been a part of some legendary groups such as Asimov. He has worked with a slew of incredible artists, far too many for me to name in just this one video. More than just a crate digger, a DJ, or a producer, he was an integral part of the hip hop community. He truly understood the culture and loved music deeply. So when Dillon, a transplant from Michigan, was studying in college at University of Florida in Gainesville and ended up coming to Jacksonville to be a part of the hip hop scene, he ended up making a partnership in the early 2000s with Paten Locke. Forgive me for any fuzziness or lack of clarity on any of these details. I wasn't there, and I've only really had the chance to admire these guys from a distance, which has been pretty easy to do because they've had an incredible output. In 2013, after receiving back the rights from their first album, Studies in Hunger, from Domination Recordings, they decided to start a record label. And since then, Full Plate has had over 10 releases in a span of 6 years. They also held some incredible local community events focused around vinyl, like Plates and Crates, as well as just putting on some banger hip hop shows. Now, Full Plate Records is based in both Atlanta and Jacksonville. Their artist roster not only includes Dillon and Paten Locke, but also the likes of Bat Sauce, Willie Evans Jr., Day Tripper, The Difference Machine, Yamin Somali, The Smile Rays, Stono Echo, and Lady Daisy. So we're talking about an independent powerhouse here. These guys aren't just some run-of-the-mill Jacksonville rappers who are just kind of out there half-assing it. They're putting in work. So with Studies in Hunger in 2009, and then Food Chain, things were starting to sort of bubble up for the twosome of Dillon and Paten Locke. Work on their third album, Rations, started in 2016 and was slow and steady up until about the year 2019, when unfortunately Paten Locke was diagnosed with cancer, and shortly thereafter he left this earth. Dillon had finished most of the album with the intention of getting P on it to do some vocals and some scratches, but fate simply did not allow it. So, after Paten's passing, Dillon put every ounce of energy into releasing the rest of Paten Locke's impressive solo catalog. If you'd like to hear more of Paten Locke's solo catalog, check out works like Black Gestapo, Americancer, and Dance on My Grave. Dillon didn't resume work on Rations until about 2021, when he began carefully curating features from some of Paten's collaborators and most admired rappers. The final contributions for the album were finished in this year, spring of 2025, bringing the full span of the creation process of this album to about a decade. And all of that hard work was definitely worth it, because what we have here is an incredible culmination of two artists' experience, their pain, their hardships, all of that energy and passion put into one final project between the two. So now that you have enough background, allow us to all get together and
pull up a fork, pull up a plate, get a full plate. Hey, yo! What up, B? Yeah. It's the return of the toughest two, son. But you still don't know how we do, son. We was about to learn, cause our stuff is gruesome. I threw some ingredients in the pot. Come on, smell what we was cooking. Right immediately when the beat began to drop.
The regal horn intro sets the stage for some top tier braggadocio, which fades gently into some moody synth and a slinky bass line that carries it all perfectly. And with this, the onslaught of bars from Dillon begins. The album starts very strong and carries it with some super strong bars and features, allowing for small dips and valleys between the giant waves of excellence. The gloomy, dark bass tones of One Man Army hit you with the sinister wartime vibes that are present within the lyrics that hit so hard the wordplay almost doubles as gunplay. We Got It is a bouncy, exotic, sample based club hip hop banger, reminiscent of the Missy Elliott era of hip hop dopeness, with endless amounts of lyrical swagger. The funky bass lines and glistening piano interjections of No Bluffin' carry what are some of the strongest vocal features on this album, in my opinion. Then we get a small breather with Cruel Mistress. The fat drums and dreamy samples of vocal cuts and vibraphones create a subtly reminiscent atmosphere, which is required to dole out some excellent verses about betrayal and heartbreak. The insanely catchy bump lets the fatness continue, with some seriously slick features over thick drums and a super eerie melody that has one of the catchiest hooks on the album, apart from We Got It and Ashtray, in my opinion. This lyrical onslaught continues into Pallbearers, which has one of my favorite samples from Paten on this album. The dark and brooding piano creates a locomotive soundbed for the fat, heavy drums, and it features some of the grimiest verses on this LP. We get another small breather with the track Whatever You Need, whose subdued and mellow production gives us a chance to catch a breath of fresh air as introspective lyrics float us into a dreamy hook. The next 5 tracks, however, continue the lyrical onslaught, starting with the track Always Never. Gotta look at my notes for this one. Spacey and soulful samples with a sparky drum groove highlight a fond reminiscence of Peyton and a fervent promise to continue the legacy of greatness and improvement that the duo founded and fostered. There's also an excellent sample of Peyton speaking on his musical influences at the end of this track. On Down with the Kings, dissonant chords and punchy drums bring us right back into that verbal onslaught, as if to remind the audience that they are witnessing kings at work in their domain. Some of the bouncy flows from Dillon on this really harken back to that golden era of hip hop. Twinkling keys, smooth shaker, big claps, and explosive synths of elusive futures help to denotate the lyrical message presented of the elusiveness of dreams and the hard work often required to achieve them. There's an excellent melodic rap feature from Jay Mistro as well. In City of Light, the chugging guitars and thunderous toms, coupled with the eerie hook sample and the police sirens at the end, help to serve up a true concrete jungle feeling the lyrics are definitely portraying. Gunsmoke is a true spaghetti western of rap, which features an airy sample reminiscent of the kind of production that Alchemist would do with some of the Griselda rappers or any of those New York cats. With the next track, we get a fun cut for some levity slash brevity. Panavidra is definitely the most easygoing and party vibe centered track on the LP. It's flirtatious and fun with a very retro, beachy 80s instrumental. It feels like an ocean breeze and a tropical drink in your hand. Now, with the last 4 tracks on this album, we start to creep into a retrospective feeling, which is the culmination of all these years that Dillon and Paten spent together. Starting with Drinking Solution, the Dilla-esque languid percussion and jazzy samplings help to create the atmosphere of a smoky lounge and a glass of something strong to which the lyrics heavily allude. Burning in the Ashtray is my personal favorite cut on the whole record. The pictures painted by the retrospective lyrics are clear and nostalgic. With its presentation of concepts like family and addiction, I think this is one of the most meaningful and poignant cuts on the album. It also has my favorite drum sounds on the album and my favorite hook. I Need Therapy is a detailed description of the conception of Full Plate, from P and Dillon's first meeting and sessions to building the label and finding their favorite collaborators. The lobster shirt references at the end will hit extra hard if you're familiar with Dillon and his Lobster Damas. And finally, with the last track, Found in a Crate, we get another detailed description of the early days of the duo, but this time it's centered around crate digging. This is also the only track on the album to have some recorded features from Paten on it, which makes it extra sentimental and hits super hard. So on the very last track on the album, you get the full picture and you get a duet between the duo, and it just sums it up perfectly. So if you give this album a listen and you take a look at Full Plate and what they've done in the span of maybe a little less than 2 decades, I think you might understand why I had such a hard time trying to put all of this into words and to represent it in a positive light and in a way that would, I guess, show importance as to how much work was put into this and how excellent of a product I truly think it is. You just don't get independent labels like these without a lot of sweat, a lot of hard work, and a lot of passion. And that is definitely something that you will find with all of the projects and all of the musicians on Full Plate, and especially Dillon and Paten Locke. But if you're tired of me yapping, go ahead and check out Rations by Dillon and Paten Locke, which is out now on all streaming platforms. And much like the gruesome twosome, stay hungry, y'all. Deuces.